My name is Dinda. I'm a third semester student, and in my class, we just have three people, and people may think English is hard. And my question is, what is your opinion and what is your strategy to make people think that English is not hard?
Why do I think English is not hard?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think what would make English easy is, again, the sounds of the letters. Where in Indonesia, am I right? The sound of C in Indonesia is ch. Is that right?
Yeah.
So I think the way in which you look at the letters is easier to sound out in English, and I think that's what makes it easier when reading and writing. I would say though that, can you hear me?
Yes.
I would say though that speaking to one another is easiest in English rather than
Di-mute kan sudah. Yang ini jangan sampai mikrofonnya itu.
Saya Frizel.
Sian boleh enak handlingnya.
Sorry, Miss Emily, for the inconvenience.
Sorry, it's just someone had music on. I couldn't hear anything. Sorry. What I was saying is speaking with one another is probably the easiest in English, but I do think that reading and writing is just challenging. But to overcome that challenge, the only way you can do it is by practicing every day, because practicing every day helps with your memory and helps with your dictation. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lovely to talk to you.
Yeah, bye.
Give applause.
Okay, maybe that is the last question for our session today. And maybe for Emily, you have any last word, suggestion for our webinar today, for our students?
It was lovely to speak to all of you. What I would say is to keep practicing, keep talking. It's very, very important to listen to other people speak English, and important to listen to other accents. So you can tell by when I'm speaking and when Will will speak, you'll hear a completely different tone and a completely different pace. Whereas Will probably speak just a little bit slower than me because New Zealanders speak very fast. So I think listening to lots of podcasts, videos of English, you'll be able to keep on top of it. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, enough, Mr. Emily.
Thank
you for your valuable time today. See you on next event.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're gonna have Mr. William for us.
Ada malam kadeknya nih. Cuaca.
And Miss Lee will be the moderator. Thank you for everyone for the first session today. Thank you for your attention. And before we move to the Mr. William, I'm as the moderator. Sorry for the inconvenience. And thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Mr. bukan Armstrong. Oh yes. Jangan coba
From you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Shah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you. Thank you for
William, silakan dipersiapkan ya. Mohon maaf, ada sedikit kurang bagus di depan. Anda boleh memberikan sampai Anda ikut ini. Oke ya, nanti silakan untuk ketika dijawab. Saya mengharapkan kalian semua berpartisipasi. Oke, thank you.
All right.
Ditanya
Thank you for giving me
jawab
chance
nanya tak
to be
paham
the second moderator.
jawab
Firstly, I'd like to remind all of the audiences to mute the speaker, please. Mute your
tanya
microphone.
bar dengan lain. Oke, fine.
Please make sure that your speaker, your microphone is in the mute mode.
Ay. Aduh.
Using reels.
Nih.
All right. Thank you for giving me chance to be the second moderator who will accompany the second speaker, William Armstrong. Before we come to the second speaker, so let me introduce myself. My name is Felci Priya Sauhana. I will be the moderator for this second session. All blessed audiences, let me give you some information that e-certificate will be automatically sent for those who fill the attendance list. The link for which will be shared at the last or at the end of the webinar. We hope that participants will stay with us till the end of the webinar. So just now we have listened to the very fabulous presentation from Emily. And then finally, it's time for us to move on the next agenda, which we are waiting for, which is the explanation from the speaker, Mr. William Armstrong. But before we start, let me read his CV. William Armstrong is an experienced English teacher drawing upon his experience in the education sector. He is focused upon developing his teaching and also the research skills to enhance his career at the forefront of English language teaching. Here are some of his achievements and job experience. He is an English teacher of English First Pekanbaru, Indonesia, 2019 to 2020. He was a short course tutor for students from Thammasat University, Thailand, and Henan Province, China in 2019. He had been being a member of Associate English Language Teacher Writing and Language Skills Center, University of York, UK, 2018 to 2019. And many more achievement and amazing job experience he had. So without any further ado, let us meet our speaker, William Armstrong. Hello, Will.
Hello, good morning.
Finally, it's really nice to see you again after the last webinar.
Thank you, it's very nice to see you too.
How is it going, Will?
Good, thank you. I'm back in the UK, so it's very early at the moment.
So
but
what
I'm very
time
pleased.
is it now?
It's about 20 to 3 in the morning.
Oh
so
my
2:40 a.m.
Oh my God, that's very kind of you. For your information, this is not the first time for William to be our speaker in our event. It's such an honor for us that again, William accepted our invitation to be the part of us. Thank you, Will. It's really kind of you.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be back. I really enjoyed it. Last time I joined for a webinar and I was speaking about how to be confident speaking in English. So I really enjoyed that, and I'm very happy to be back to see you all again.
Thank you so much, Will. So what is your topic for today, Will?
Okay, so my topic is why learn English? As Emily touched upon, she spoke a little about why English is important, and I want to go into that in a little bit more depth.
Wow, it's going to be so much important. Are you ready, Will?
I'm ready, yes.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, here it is, William Armstrong. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Okay,
hopefully you can see
All right.
there we go. So, as I said, I'd like to speak to you about why learning English is important. And Emily gave us a few pointers, which was very interesting. So if you start thinking about them, just briefly, thank you very much, Fauci, for the introduction. As you were told, I was teaching in the city of Pekanbaru last year, and I'm now living back in the UK. And I've just accepted a new position working back at the University of York, where I worked before I came to Indonesia, as a teaching English and also as a supervisor there. And I'm intending to continue my research. I'm very interested in teaching English. My main area of research is teaching writing, specifically grammar and coherence in writing. So when we have the questions and answers at the end, if you've got any questions about writing in particular, then I would be very happy to answer them. So, why learn English? I'd like you to just think briefly, why is learning English important? And maybe you can give me some suggestions in the chat. Why do you think learning English is important?
Yeah, Will, are you there?
Yeah, sorry. I can't see the chat at the moment. I was just going to try. There we go. So, if you have any idea, why do you think learning English is important? You can just type it in the chat. And during my presentation, I will ask you a few questions, and you can just type answers in the chat, and I'll watch the chat. And if there's any interesting answers, I'll mention them. Okay. So, my first question is, why do you think learning English is important?
So everybody, you can help to type in the chat the answer of Will's question. Why learning English is important?
Okay, so you can still continue to write answers. Why is it important to learn English in the chat while I continue?
Go ahead.
So, which countries is speaking English important in? To think about that, I've got a list here of the top 6 countries by the number of English speakers. So these are the countries that have the most people who say they can speak English fluently. What I'd like you to do for this is try and guess some of these countries. So, which countries do you think are on this list? You can type this in the chat. Which countries do you think these are? Let me just put that question in the chat for you. Which countries have the most English speakers? USA. So, USA is definitely on this list. Thank you. Can anyone guess any other countries that might be on this list? The countries with the most English speakers. Oh, there we go. Australia? Maybe? Who thinks Australia might be in the list? Canada, New Zealand. We've had Emily from New Zealand. Maybe New Zealand's in that list. Okay, I can show you two of the list. So number one on the list, as was suggested, is the USA or America. So the most English speakers in the world is in the USA. Singapore, a lot of people can speak English in Singapore. This, number 6 on the list is the UK, where I live. 63 million people. We've got 4 more. And no one's mentioned any of these 4. So these are the countries with the most people who can speak English fluently. India, very good. India is number 2. Very good suggestion. So 194 million people in India can speak English fluently. China has a very large population. It's not on my list. So maybe the level of English speaking is a little bit lower. Japan as a suggestion. Malaysia, Ghana. Oh, Ghana's an interesting one because our next answer is in Africa. It's Nigeria with 178 million. Okay, and the last 2 are Pakistan and an Asian country, the Philippines. So my point here is that English is an international language, and there's more fluent speakers of English in India or Nigeria than there are in the UK or Australia or New Zealand. So when we think about English, we need to remember it's an international language, even in countries who have a different first language. Now, another question for you. The number of English speakers in this country. I hope you can recognize this country from the map. Would anyone like to guess the number of English speakers in Indonesia? Any guesses for the number of English speakers? The population of Indonesia is about 271 million, the total number of people. Does anyone have any guesses how many of those? Oh, 10 million as a guess? 50 million? Actually, I looked for this number, and sometimes this can be a very hard piece of information, very hard statistic to find. So you would see on my previous slide, I put years for the different countries, because sometimes it's hard to find the statistics for the current statistics for this year. I couldn't find a number for the number of English speakers in Indonesia, but I would be very interested to find out. Does anyone think it's increasing or decreasing? Do you think the number of English speakers in Indonesia is increasing or decreasing? Increasing. I agree. And it's important because of English being an international language. So I'm going to look at different areas, different reasons for why English is important. So think about why you think it's important and see if they come up on my reasons. So the first area I'd like to talk about is English is important for learning, for education. This is my area of passion. It's what I work in, education. But also, I think it's very important to recognize that learning is something we should do through our whole life. Traditionally, people might view learning as something you do when you're young. You go to school, then maybe high school, and then on to university, And after university, after your degree, then maybe you work. And that's the end of your education. But I think it's really important that people begin to see learning as something we do for our whole lives. The rate of change in the world, the speed of technology, everything is increasing. And for us to be able to communicate, for us to be able to work in the future, we need to keep learning, keep improving our skills. And so it's very important to think about learning as something we do through our whole lives. The first area of learning, for which I think English is very important, is academic learning. So particularly if you wanted to study a degree or a higher degree, like a master's or a PhD in another country, English allows you to study in USA. A lot of European countries teach in English rather than their native language. Secondly, English is very useful for learning about science, engineering, and technical knowledge. It's the main language used in all these areas across the world. Thirdly, the social skills. Social skills are something that, again, maybe we think about as skills that we learn mainly when we're children, when we're younger. How to speak, how to communicate with others. But there's a lot of important social skills that we continue to learn and are very useful as we get older. For example, the ability to do presentations, teamwork, leadership skills, and skills like negotiation, which is very important in business. So social skills are another area in which English can help us develop further. And finally, practical skills. For this one, I've put a photo of someone repairing or renovating a bike, because this is something that I quite like to do. So this is a skill that I like to learn. But I could also have put a photo of someone cooking or baking, which is something else I like to do. But other activities where you want to learn practical skills like drawing, painting, music, playing a musical instrument, sports, for learning practical skills for sports, or many other skills, practical skills. Again, for all these areas of education, there is much more information available in English, more material in English, and also more opportunities to learn them in English. So more courses are available in English than any other language. The second area that I'd like to consider, maybe you can guess from my picture. We've had education or learning. English is also very important for work. It's important for learning, it's important for work. The first way in which I would say it's important for work would be if you had the opportunity to move to another country to work. If you move to Malaysia, maybe, do you find Malay quite easy to understand and communicate in? But if it was another country that was a bit further, Cambodia, Thailand, which would be the most useful language for all these opportunities? When we move to a new country, it's very helpful to learn that language. I did my best to learn some Bahasa while I was living in Indonesia. But one language we can usually use to help us in different countries, especially in working, is English. Secondly, you might be working in Indonesia, but talking to people in other countries. The world is becoming more globalized, and so it's more and more common that for your work, you might need to speak to people in other countries. That could be that you work in a very big organization, a multinational organization, and that company has headquarters or bases in lots of different countries. And so you need to speak to other people in the organization. But it might be that you work on your own, that you're an entrepreneur, but you might want to buy products from China, for example, or you might want to get services supplied from Australia. And for international business, the language most commonly used is English. Thirdly, in the industry in which you work, you might have technical manuals. That could be for something like the automotive industry, the motor industry, producing cars or repairing cars. Or it could be the software, computer software industry, for example. And if you're lucky, you get a manual that is written in many different languages. But if you can only find the technical manual in one language, it's usually English. And lastly, for work, there's many opportunities involved in the language of English. I know because as Ms. Felty kindly mentioned, I've done a lot of different work using the English language. So it could be teaching English, but it could also be teaching EAP, English for academic purposes. So really focusing on academic writing skills. It could be skills like proofreading. So reading students' assignments for them and giving them feedback and correction. There's many jobs within English language. So if you improve your English language skills, that's another option. As far as I'm concerned, it's a very rewarding option to work in. So I've spoken about why English is important for education, why English is important for work. There's one more main aspect I would like to talk about. Okay, I've picked what might seem quite, I don't know, quite childish picture for this one. And maybe a childish word for it, play. We could call it leisure time, free time activities. But for me, it's very important that everyone has time to enjoy themselves. And English can help with this too. How? Well, firstly, I know it's very difficult to travel recently because of COVID, and I've not been able to travel to any other countries since I returned from Indonesia to the UK last year. But in the future, it will get easier again to travel, possibly easier than it's ever been before. And if you're traveling, if you were planning to visit several countries, English is very useful. Secondly, does anyone know what percentage of YouTube videos are in English? If you would like to have a guess what percentage of YouTube videos are in English, you can type that in the chat, just guess. But we can use English listening skills for watching YouTube, listening to music, and reading skills for reading books, magazines, blogs, all sorts of things in English. 80% as a guess for the percentage of YouTube videos that are in English. The most recent statistic I found was 66% of YouTube videos are in English. Okay, so someone's mentioned all language skills. So I've said how listening and reading might be useful for entertainment. How do you think speaking and writing might be interesting, or it might be useful for your leisure time? Think of how you might use speaking and writing. As I said, the world is becoming more globalized. It's much easier to communicate with people in other countries. And that could be on apps, social media apps, chatting apps, or it could be things like online gaming. But there's many, many opportunities to speak to people in other countries now. And that could be typing, it could be using your writing skills, or it could be speaking, as I'm doing now. Yeah, productive skills is the very, very good term. Productive skills is the term for our speaking and our writing. So we've got our receptive skills, our listening and our reading are useful for our entertainment. And so are our productive skills for talking to people in other countries. And English is the main language for that. And finally, if you're not visiting another country, and if you're not online, you still might use those English skills, even in Indonesia. Tourism is an important industry for Indonesia. And I think the Indonesian government realizes that tourism can become an even more important industry for Indonesia. It's a massive country with lots of different islands with so many different fantastic places, most of which I haven't had a chance to visit yet. And I hope to visit so many of them in the future. So even in Indonesia, Bali is a fantastic example, as has been written in the chat. Even in Indonesia, you'll have the chance to speak to people from other countries. And they might be from an English-speaking country, like the USA, but they might be from another country that we've seen before, like India or Nigeria. And English is the language that we can use to communicate with most of these people. So English is often called the language of business. English is often called the language of the internet as well. We can also say, you might hear the term English as a lingua franca. What does this mean? English as a lingua franca. You may come across this. And what it means is it means a common language, a language that two groups of people who don't share the same native language can use to communicate. So it could be people in Ghana communicating with people in Mexico. And English is the lingua franca that is most commonly used. And that's why it's so important. So, to summarize, I talked about why English is so important for education, why it's so important for work, and why it's also really important for entertainment, to have fun, to play. And the last thing I'm going to ask you to suggest is to answer my question, why learn English? If you try to answer it in one word, what word do you think I might use? How can we answer the question, why learn English? In one word or just a few words? Work. So you might think work to survive. Fantastic answer. Does anyone else have any suggestions? Why learn English? As short as you can. To travel abroad, to make friends, fantastic. Yeah, I miss traveling abroad. English is the most used and spoken language around the world, fantastic. So this is why English is so important. If I try to answer my question in one word, to summarize everything that I've said, there's a key word and someone's just mentioned it in the chat, which is very good. Because the one word I would use to summarize why learn English is opportunities. We've talked about lots of opportunities that learning English will give you. We can guess or predict a lot of the opportunities. Like, I know that learning English will give me the opportunity to study in the USA or the Netherlands. But also, there will be opportunities in the future that we don't know yet, that you can't predict. But there will be opportunities that you can only take if you can speak English. So learning English is really important for the opportunities we know, but also new opportunities in the future. Thank you all very much. That's the end of my presentation. But if you have any questions to ask me about why I think learning English is important, or if you have questions on any other topic, I think we'll now have the question and answer session. So you can ask me questions about anything at all.
All right. Wow, it's a very wonderful discussion. To be honest, I personally really amazed with this presentation. Thank you very much, Will. I hope you all are also enjoyed presentation also. And then now William will answer some questions. But before we come to the question and answer session, let me give you a little bit summary for William's presentation. That he said that English can help you to learn, to work, and also to play even. And maybe sometimes we can travel the world again, so we will need English. And or as simple as to listen to the music, watching film, or YouTube's videos, and also for reading books, or using social media, or becoming a tourist guide someday, as we have a wonderful tourism in Indonesia. So it can be concluded that learning English gives you a lot of opportunities in the future. I myself also feel that the useful of English that give me a lot of opportunities. Okay, now let's come to the question and answer session. I'm going to give you another 3 questions. For those who wants to ask questions, please raise your hand. Yeah, Sipa. All right. We have a question from our student, Will.
Okay, great.
Sipa, over there. Yeah.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hi, William.
Hi, nice to meet you.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you today?
Okay, I'm also fine. Okay, I'm Sita Satira. I'm a student at I'm student of English study program at Islamic University of Indonesia. Okay, I wanna ask you. As we know, there are 2
there are two English guidelines that are British and American. Okay, we as foreign language learner, which one is the most effective? The most effective to learn between the two
Right,
Okay.
that's a great question. So, which is the most effective to learn, American English or British English? I would say that the most important thing is not to worry too much, because we can talk about American English and British English as the two most important types of English, but there are more. We could talk about Australian English, New Zealand English, and even the English of other countries who don't have English as a first language. So Indian English, again, will be slightly different. In terms of global English, I would say that the most common English is American English. If you watch videos on YouTube, the most common accent you will hear is the American accent. And if you watch films, the most common English you'll hear is American English. So for listening, maybe being able to understand an American accent is even more useful than being able to understand a British accent, like my accent. But I would say it's really not, the differences are quite small, and it's really not too important to worry about the differences. For example, if you were studying in the UK and you used American English spellings, because one of the differences can be some words are spelt differently in American English, it would be accepted. So my biggest suggestion is that it's very good to be aware of the differences between American English and British English, but you shouldn't worry about it in terms of your learning. We use English in lots of different ways to speak to people in different countries, and you shouldn't worry too much about whether you're using American English or British English or a mixture. The important thing about English is it gives us all an ability to communicate with each other, so to communicate with people in other countries. So that's the most important thing. Does that answer your question?
Okay, thank you, William.
Thank you.
All right. It's very good question from Sifa. She asked about how to learn English effectively, and we'll say that it's good to be aware to plenty of speaking English, but you don't have to be worried about it, right, Will?
That's right, yeah. Okay. So you don't
Okay.
have to worry about whether you're speaking in American English or British English. A mixture between the two is fine.
Okay. All right, next question, please. Next question. Yeah, come here. So we have another question from our student, Will.
Great.
Okay, a minute. Unmute first. Okay, don't forget to introduce yourself.
Can you unmute?
Hello.
Hello.
So, my name is Nita, and I have a
Nisa.
question. Yes, I'm Nita.
Nice to meet you, Nisa.
Yes, nice to meet you. So my question is, we can learn English everywhere and anywhere, right? Yes, and also we can learn English by watching the movies, listening to the music, podcast, and any other platform, right? I've watched many movies and such as English lesson for you on YouTube and listen to the podcast as well. I love to listen Emma Chamberlain podcast. So do you have any recommendation where I can learn English by those platforms, such as which movie that I have to watch? Is this worth to watch?
Okay, I heard most of that, but could you just tell me the question again? You wanted a recommendation for which which movies and which things to listen to? Sorry, you're on mute again at the moment. Can you unmute again? Sorry, can you unmute again? I can't hear you at the moment.
Unmute.
So you were asking for recommendations of things to listen to?
Yeah.
What was it specifically that you wanted to practice?
Can you repeat your question?
I just wanted you to repeat your question. So you were asking me for recommendations, but...
Oh, okay. So as I said, we can learn English everywhere and anywhere. Also, we can learn English by watching the movies, listening to the music, podcasts, and any other platforms, right? I have watched many movies, and such as English Lesson for You on YouTube, and listen to the podcast as well. I love to listen Emma Chamberlain podcast, and I have watched English Lesson for You on YouTube. So, do you have any recommendations where I can learn English by those platforms, such as which movie that I have to watch? This is worth it, so I can improve my English. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's a very good question. So,
yeah.
In terms of movies to recommend, I would say that almost any movie that's in English will be helpful. So the most important thing is to watch things that you're interested in. When I was teaching in Indonesia, what I would tell my students is I didn't mind what they read or what they watched or what they listened to, because if it was in English, it was helping them. So the most important thing is something that you're interested in, because then you'll pay more attention. When people specifically ask me about suggestions to help them learn listening to British accent, one of the recommendations I always give is if you can access BBC radio. The BBC radio broadcasts throughout the world, and that's a really, really good way to practice English listening, and especially good for pronunciation and for people who really, we talked about American English and British English, for people who really want to improve their British listening skills and pronunciation, then BBC Radio is a really good one, and you can listen to it live, or they have lots of podcasts too.
Okay, I want to listen to BBC radio. Thank you for your recommendation.
Okay, thank you very much for your question, and your pronunciation is very good too.
Oh, thank you.
All right, Gemplau. All right, so it doesn't matter what movies or YouTube videos that you watch. The very important thing is as far as it is in English, so it can help you to learn, right, Will?
That's right, yeah. There's a
Okay.
couple of things people have mentioned in the chat. There was a useful thing when we were talking about the difference between British and American English. A lot of British English might be considered more formal. There's a really good example of shall. We shall do something rather than we will or we should. And the other question in the chat was, why is it difficult to measure bilingual proficiency? Which is a really good question. It's quite a difficult question to answer. I would say the main reason why it's difficult to measure is because it's very hard to measure proficiency in any language. For example, proficiency in English. We have tests you might be aware of, like IELTS, TOEFL, tests that you have to pass to get accepted on certain academic programs, but they're not perfect tests. So we don't have a perfect test for English, which is the most commonly spoken language in the world. So to then test other languages or even compare how good someone is at speaking one language with another is very difficult, because every language has its own features, and comparing one to another is very difficult. So comparing someone's ability in one language with their ability in another language is not a direct comparison. So that would be my answer for why it's difficult to measure bilingual proficiency. But it's a very good question, and you could research that for several years to give a much better answer.
Okay, thank you for the question, Hayati Nupus, and thank you, Will, for answering the question. Do we still have time to have another question? Anyone want to ask the question? Anyone, please? Udah? Sudah. Or maybe the audience in the Zoom meeting, you can ask the question for Will. Another question, please.
Okay, anyone in the Zoom audience have a question for me? It can be a question about anything. It can be...
Others?
Hi, Mr. Will.
Hi.
Sorry if I on the camera. I just want to ask, I want to know more deeply about what are the similarities and differences between the process of child language acquisition and that of the language acquisition. Which one are the similarities or differences between in language acquisition process child in or adult? Thank you.
Okay, so the similarities and differences between language acquisition of our native language and second language acquisition. It depends, I would say it depends a lot on how the second language is taught. Traditionally, there's a very big difference between language acquisition and second language acquisition, because the way other languages, foreign languages, are taught has generally been very different from the way a child naturally learns their native language. I think over time, a lot of researchers have looked at this and tried to incorporate some of the ways that people learn their native language to try and use them in second language teaching, but it will always be a little bit different. So my answer to that would be, it depends a lot on the teaching style, but I would say, if I had to pick one biggest difference, I would say it's that most of your native language acquisition comes from trial and error. It comes from trying and making mistakes. But when we're learning a second language, people always try to avoid making mistakes. No one likes making mistakes. Everyone makes them, but no one likes it. And one of the things that I find is really important is the more confident people can come with trying language and being willing to make mistakes, because that's the best way to learn, the quicker they can learn the language. And my personal experience of that is that before I moved to Indonesia, I only learned a tiny amount of Bahasa, and I never had any lessons. But most of the Bahasa I learned was living in Indonesia, just by speaking to people who didn't speak English, or even people who did speak English, but were happy to give me the opportunity to practice my Bahasa. And so it came from, that was more similar to language acquisition, I believe, because I listened to people and I tried the language and I made lots of mistakes, but people were patient and they told me when I was making mistakes so I could learn from them. So I would say that's the biggest difference between language acquisition and second language acquisition. But I would say that the gap has got slightly smaller as researchers have tried to incorporate some of the natural ways that we learn language and try to build them into our foreign language teaching.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Will.
Thank you for your great question.
Okay, thank you again, Hidayatulnufus, for the question and the answer for Mr. Will. And then we'll say that don't forget that the more confident people to learn language and let yourself to make some mistakes, the quicker you will learn. Okay, another question, please. Do we have another question? If no more, so thank you, William, for answering the question and for the great presentation as well. It's really a pleasure to have you with us. Hopefully you can visit us someday.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to join you, and I really hope that certainly as travel gets easier and when I come back to Indonesia, I very much look forward to visiting at the university in Tempelahan.
Okay, thank you, Will. So just now you say that you have ever been in Pekanbaru and you have learned a little bit Bahasa language, right? Okay, so can you say hello to us in Bahasa? Maybe you want to say something?
It's so difficult when someone asks to think what to say. Selamat pagi, nama saya William Armstrong, tapi boleh bilang Will. Banyak bahasa saya informal kerana saya belajar dari berbicara dengan teman-teman dan orang Indonesia.
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Will. It's quite a good motivation for our students and also for the audience in the Zoom meeting. Hopefully we can take the advantages from this webinar. So this concludes the webinar. Thank you all for attending. And then the absent has been, not yet. Huh? Okay, for the absent, we will deliver it in the WhatsApp group. And then thank you again for joining this webinar till the end. We hope that you have learned and enjoyed the presentation. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's all for today. Last words. I'm Pelci. Thank you and apologize for the previously if any words that less pleasing to the audience here. Let us close this webinar by saying Hamdalah. Okay, last word. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.